popular notions of what Sir said is actually off the beaten track. But popular notions of landscape design that is Indian is Mughal. That is what our you know the country's center is. That is how it is modeled after. Forget that. Look at our Malampura basin. It is again modeled after Mughal gardens. So, which is very new. Okay, so before that, we cannot say that because that is a time when we have had prolific building activities happening. All the temples that Professor T.V. Bharat talked about, they were all pre 15th century temples. Yeah, so we have a rich building tradition, but textbooks they never talk about a landscape tradition that is uniquely belonging to this region. I don't think we try to make a tree look like something else. Okay, it is allowed to grow. The only thing that is important here is where you are building and where you are not building. So basically, it is a philosophy that takes just enough of resources, and when you take it, you apologize, and when you take it, you request all the previous inhabitants on that patch of land to peacefully move away and find new houses, and then you use it. That is the essence of any ceremony that marks the beginning of building activity. And there is absolutely no attempt at reordering nature. We are fine with wilderness, and that is the crux of the indigenous landscape language that we have. Okay, that we are fine if nature looks ugly, wild, because normally we try to equate good with agriculture and bad with wild. But this understanding that the bad or the wild is required for good, that is the cornerstone of Indian knowledge systems in terms of anything that is not built. I'm going to talk about is the deep ecology perspective in Indian knowledge systems as manifested in sacred groves. So, this presentation is bound to have a little bit of coloring that is derived from my education as an architect and a landscape architect. So, that is a perspective in which we are looking at this. Let me ask you a question. We saw Chitra ma'am's presentation on indigenous architecture in Kerala. What about landscape? Is there no landscape design that we can say is our own? When you say Indian landscape architecture, what comes to your mind? Sorry? Tulsi, yes. Popular notions of what Sir said is actually off the beaten track. But popular notions of landscape design that is Indian is Mughal. That is what our the country's center is. That is how it is modeled after. Forget that. Look at our Malampura basin. It is again modeled after Mughal gardens. So, which is very new. Okay, so before that, we cannot say that because that is a time when we have had prolific building activities happening. All the temples that Professor T.V. Bharat talked about, they were all pre 15th century temples. Yeah, so we have a rich building tradition, but textbooks they never talk about a landscape tradition that is uniquely belonging to this region. So that was what the perspective in which I am looking at sacred groves. Now, we are talking about the 16th century. This was the time when seminal ideas were being. We are looking at these three traditions because these are the three main design traditions that we have at this point in time. We all know about Renaissance. Now that this is when nature was ordered through artifice, geometry and allegorical iconographies were prominent, and it was all about controlling nature into rigid lines that resonated with the sense of aesthetic that was present at that point in time. This is a typical example. The image is there just to show you what the landscape traditions were like. So this particular garden is called Villa d'Est. So this is what it is. Nature is ordered into very rigid geometries that has no room for anything that is organic. This is Diana, goddess of nature, with her many breasts that's supposed to sustain the earth. And this is the next tradition, which is Islamic, where it is a pre-Islamic fashion iconography, where you have a central fountain and streams flowing in four cardinal directions. So this is the imagery upon which almost all of the landscape design in the Islamic world was done. The typical example that I'm looking at is Isfahan, wherein you have multiple squares which again resonate the same Charbagh system. Isfahan again, this is the main mosque. Next. Isfahan again, next. There might be a lot of imagery in these slides, just so that you get to know what visually what we're talking about. Next. The third, now we have two very similar cultures. Both are talking about ordered nature, nature that is tamed through artifice. Now this third one, though the visual imagery is very different, because this is characterized by what is called wabi sabi. Okay, so we are finding perfection in imperfection. Okay, so a typical example is when a plate breaks. They don't throw it away, rather they heal it with gold. And those imperfections that are there in the plate is a new aesthetic. So that philosophy was what was embodied in Japanese landscapes. A typical example is Samboin. You do not see those rigid lines anymore, but is it any more organic, or is it as ordered, is what we need to think about. Next. Everything is written down here. Every single last detail is written down here. Though we are seeing a very organic image with no straight lines in it, it is as much ordered by artifice as the previous two images. Even the patterns of lichen growing on this rock, it is written down. What percentage, which side, how much percentage of lichen should be growing. That is again designed by application of lime, etc. So nothing, not even a grain of sand is left as accident or natural, rather it is entirely controlled. This is the imagery of what it looks like. Next. So you can see the rakings on the sand in the top. Even the way a tree grows, that again is modified by having weights hanging down from the branch. So it is perhaps even more controlled than the first two examples. Next one. Now here, this is one place where grandiose design ideals of what landscape should look like, it appears to be absent. I don't think we try to make a tree look like something else. Okay, it is allowed to grow. The only thing that is important here is where you are building and where you are not building. So basically, it is a philosophy that takes just enough of resources, and when you take it, you apologize, and when you take it, you request all the previous inhabitants on that patch of land to peacefully move away and find new houses, and then you use it. That is the essence of any ceremony that marks the beginning of building activity. Okay? And there is absolutely no attempt at reordering nature. We are fine with wilderness, and that is the crux of the indigenous landscape language that we have. Okay, that we are fine if nature looks ugly, wild, because normally we try to equate good with agriculture and bad with wild. But this understanding that the bad or the wild is required for good, that is the cornerstone of Indian knowledge systems in terms of anything that is not built. Okay. This is an example of how, it's fine if it is wild and there is beauty in it. We do not have that drive to control it or make it grow in certain lines or conform to a specific ideal of beauty that we have ingrained in ourselves through various influences. Next. And this is the second expression, which is tanks. Okay. So if you look at it as a designer would look at it, we have very few elements. One would of course be plants or trees that are venerated, which will have some protective element around it. You would have wilderness patches or forest patches which are conserved as they are. And then you might have water sources which are again conserved. So with these three basic elements, our landscape ideal sort of begins and ends there, where the basic tenet is non-action. We don't do anything to it, we allow it to be. And this philosophy resonates in next slide. So I'm talking about these wilderness patches that are protected, and they are known as sacred groves, as Professor Madhav Gadgil told us yesterday and Sir has talked about today. Now these sacred sites, these sacred groves or sacred forests or sacred forest fragments, they belong, they are a subset of what is known as sacred natural sites. So sacred natural sites could be rocks, hillocks, caves, rivers, mountain ranges. It can even be a single tree. Okay. So and these are basically patches of or parcels of land that are left untouched by indigenous communities, and they are always abodes of the gods. That is the way in which sanctity is ascribed to these patches of landscape. Next one. Now, Gadgil Sir's papers, they talk about how sacred groves began to appear. And what is told in literature is that at the point of shifting agriculture, I mean, obviously, given if you look at this patch of land that we are in, on one side we have Western Ghats, on the other side we have the Arabian Sea, we have plentiful rain, we have rich soil. So before people started living here, these would have all been forests, right? And when people needed land for agriculture and for settlements, you have to clear forests. And when these forests were getting cleared, certain patches were left undisturbed. Even today, if you talk to people, the term that is used for clearing is Punam Kottal. It's a Malayalam regional term for clearing. And certain patches are left as Sangalpam. Or it is it's a reminder, or it's a personification of what was and that which that we have changed. So it is that ideology that has left us with certain distinct patches of original natural vegetation amidst human modified landscapes, and that is probably a very important facet where conservation is not taken away from people, like Madhav sir said yesterday. Rather, it is very much inside human modified landscapes. Next. The first mention of a sacred grove, very interestingly, is in the Golden Bow, which is a book on religion, on magic and religion by James Fraser, 1920. And the grove that is being talked about is Diana's Grove. You must remember Diana from the Renaissance period. And the lake that is there, it is known as Diana's Mirror. This is in Italy. Next. This is an image. This was a set of protected or sacred sites inside protected areas, which was mapped by Beyond Faith is the name of the book, and it is mapped atop biodiversity hotspots. Okay, so what you can see is that all of these groves that are or sacred sites, they are interspersed in biodiversity rich areas. And the moment you talk about biodiverse areas, you're also talking about high population areas. And the moment you're talking about high population areas, we're also talking about high resource extraction areas. And the moment you talk about high resource extraction areas, that is where conservation becomes most important. So this is a very unique opportunity where you have these delineated sacred areas which are meant for conservation in the most important areas for conservation. That is areas that have high biodiversity and areas that have high population. Next. So now are sacred groves purely a phenomenon that is found in Kerala? No. It's there all over India. Are they found only in India? No, they are found all over the world. Okay. The only difference is that they are found in the old world and not in the new world, where indigenous communities have had influence on the way land is being used. It is in those areas that we have sacred sites. Next. These are examples of sacred groves that are listed in the World Heritage List, WHL. So the first one is Cedars of Gods, Lebanon. I'm just going through it very, very fast. I think next. This is what it looks like. So this grove is actually dedicated to the wind god Enlil. And but then there was a time when intense shipbuilding was happening, where most of the groves were lost. Next. This is in Estonia. This is again a sacred grove. Next, Harry. Philippines. Next. Osunosogbo, Nigeria. Next. Mothland, Meghalaya. Next. So these are examples of groves that are inscribed in the World Heritage List. And now we'll look at sacred groves in India. Next, Harry. So now groves in India, this is actually a topic that was already said yesterday by Professor Gadgil, that most of these groves were integrated into forest land, which was again managed by the British for the principal objective of resource extraction, mainly timber. We all know that the Buckingham Palace and the entire fleet that allowed them to win the war, it was taken from the Malabar region. 380,000 hectares of forest was what was used for winning the war and for the palace. But then after which, this is also the time when communities were divorced from the management of forest. The forest management became exogamous rather than endogamous. And with India's Forest Right Acts of 2006, this situation was reversed to a certain extent. Next. Yes, I just wanted to show that it was his work that was cited there. Now, yeah, next one. That's the mahua tree. Now, It is estimated that we have between 100,000 to 150,000 SGs, but number was said in 2001. It is much more than that. In fact, the more local you go, the more you blow up the scale, you find more and more sacred groves all over the country. Here, the only difference is that it's not really the mainstream religion that is supporting these sacred groves. Rather, you have many local gods. Okay, that is the word, because they may not have significance outside a certain region. So it is these local gods that sustain sacred groves. Next. That is not a term that I have used, it is used by Kent. Okay. So this is again, it just gives you an idea of documented groves, which is very far from reality. This is an area that requires as many researchers as possible in order to map and document groves so that they do not get lost in the march of rapid urbanization. Next. Tamil Nadu. Next, Hari. So these are all examples of groves from different places in India. They all have very distinct identities, distinct vegetation composition. This, by the way, is Rajasthan, Meghalaya. Okay. Now these are opportunities for culture-based solutions. We've all heard of nature-based solutions to mitigate climate change. Similarly, you have culture-based solutions to mitigate climate change. And sacred groves is an amalgamation of both. They integrate both nature-based solutions and culture-based solutions to mitigate climate change. And all of this is happening only because of continuous amalgamation of knowledge by people who are living in close proximity with the land that they are dependent on. Otherwise, such intimate knowledge of the land, of how plants, animals, birds, reptiles, they behave when even small disturbances happen, that cannot be there without first-hand experiences. This image is taken from Das et al. 2021 paper, where you're talking about how TEK is manifested and what are the actions that are resultant from the sources of knowledge. Okay. Now this again, this research is rather 20 years old, wherein the links between ecology, religion and environmentalism, it is gaining more and more attention, especially from IUCN. Next. Sacred groves, like I said, I don't think it is a topic that is much studied in the design world or planning world. Most of the studies concentrate in the realm of biodiversity. Next, Hari, socio-cultural studies. Several studies have happened about the conservation value of sacred groves. Next, about vegetation structure. This is possibly the single most biggest body of work available. Next. Several comparative studies with non-sacred sites like the ones mentioned too. They are again in quite a few are there. Next. There are landscape scale studies that talk about fragmentation on biodiversity, which could be one reason for what you saw on the field. Next. Ecological service assessments. This is possibly the newest branch of studies. As you can see, most of them are in the last decade. Next. Water conservation studies. Pioneer is sitting here in this room of sacred groves. And threats. Threats are also extensively studied about what are the forces that are impacting the survival of sacred groves. Now what is most important is that what we have today are sacred grove fragments or remnants that are there after a very severely subtractive process. How many sacred groves are getting created when you compare to the number that are getting lost in terms of number, in terms of quality as well. Next. Now, actual legal backing for conservation of sacred groves is not there. If I have a grove in my land, I can build my home there. Nothing stops me from doing so. But it's only the faith system that is preventing me from doing so. Next. Now, the crux of the matter is that sacred groves or the sanctity is supposed to permeate the entire grove. Okay? It is the vegetation and the land and everything that is there in that patch of land that is considered sacred. But then slowly we begin to ascribe it to a movable object. It could be anything. It could be something that is representing divinity. And once you have an object coming in there, these deities are deities that are supposed to get wet in the rain. They are supposed to, be out in the sun. They are supposed to be exposed to the rain. They are supposed to have snakes and reptiles and everyone walk around them. They are fine with it. But then at some point in time, we feel that we need to protect them. Bhagavati needs to have a roof over her head. And that is how that process of transformation happens. And thus the loss that we might be incurring in the name of, it is always actions that are done in good faith, but the resultant situation can be very detrimental. Next, Hari. So these are examples of biocultural conservation, where a single parcel of land is conserving biodiversity, it's conserving water, and it is conserving culture. So all three facets gets conserved when you conserve a sacred grove. Next. So all of this worldview that we talked about, slides are a little jumbled, I can see. It talks about a certain attitude towards the environment that is allowing us to conserve and use as little as possible. Now, if we were to compare this attitude with other populations, if everyone in this world were to live as North Americans do, we would actually need 5 Earths. If everyone were to live in the world as people in Africa do, we would need just 0.8 Earths. South America, we will need just 1.8 Earths. Europe, 2.8 Earths. And in Asia, if everyone were to live like how people live in Asia, we would just need 0.7 Earths. So this worldview that does not consider human beings as an entity that is separate from his or her surroundings, that is deep ecology. I'm saying this because this is the only philosophy that is there in mainstream philosophy and science that resonates with this attitude. There isn't anything else that fits perfectly with this particular worldview. Now, this was coined by the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss. And these two are very seminal books which discuss deep ecology. So it characterizes this profound need to protect the earth. You don't find yourself to be different from the beings and the land around you. What can I say? There are. If I were to say that we need to conserve a river, why do we need to conserve a river? Most of you here, because this is a self-selected group, you would say that the river needs to be conserved because it has to be. You don't need any reasons to conserve a river. That is the biocentric way of looking at things, where you do not need, a list of reasons to conserve nature. But then most of environmental science, when you talk about nature conservation, it is about reasons are anthropocentric again. A river has to be conserved because we need water. A river should not be polluted because we need water. Or biodiversity needs to be conserved because our kids needs to survive. But those reasons are not required when you look at it from the perspective of deep ecology. And I just thought I would mention this book. I think I read this when I was in 11th or 12th. Then I didn't understand it, but it was a very engaging book. It was one train journey overnight. It was done. It is that riveting. You cannot put it down. So this entire thing is a conversation between a gorilla and a man. And the gorilla is asking questions very much like the Upanishad, where it is a question answer format. Through these questions, the gorilla is making him understand. Okay. So what Ishmael is about is, it is our worldviews or our attitudes towards nature that determines the way in which we treat the earth. Okay. And he says that there are two kinds of cultures, and culture is nothing but an enactment of our myths. Okay. So the first question he asks is, okay, what culture are you in? And then he asks, what are your culture's myths? And he says that we believe in science, we have no myths. And then through questions, again the gorilla says that no, you do have myths. And that, in fact, is the biggest determinant of how you treat the earth. So there are two cultures, according to Ishmael. One is the taker story, and the other is the leaver story. So the takers, they believe that the world belongs to man. You can go forth and take what is required. It is all right if you dominate the earth, control the earth. While the leavers, they believe that man belongs to the world. So idea is the same. One is an anthropocentric worldview, and the second is a biocentric worldview. It is, in essence, it is biospheric egalitarianism is what deep ecology talks about. And this is nothing new, because all over the world, where indigenous societies have a say on the way land is managed, this is the philosophy that is followed. There are no exceptions at all. You can check. Okay, so this delineating tracts of land as sacred and conserving them, it has a very distinct underlying ecological aspect as well. Next. So there are several poetry like this which talks about man is no different from any other being that occupies the earth. Okay. Next, it's like divinity permeates everything that lives, moves, or if it does not live and move also, divinity permeates everything. Next. This is an example of what a sacred grove looks like. It is not a really good example. Next one, but it's very nearby. Next one. Another example is this. This is again on the beach. These are really small patches of land. These are it begins from a few square meters to the largest might have, say, about 10 hectares. We do have only small patches in Kerala simply because of our settlement pattern and our population density. It's very difficult for us to sustain huge areas of conservation. Anybody who has gone to Kapad would have seen this. Yes.
So but I didn't realize that it did not have that kind of density.
Yes, very few have that dense thing. That is again part of the ongoing process of change. Next one. Again, I'm putting on the hat of the designer. The word design, the does not mean a pattern like this. It does not mean a color combination. It does not mean the way certain shapes come together. What it really means is intent. Okay? If you have an intent behind an action, it is design. Okay? So in the case of sacred groves, the only intent that is possible, because you're not touching it, it is the action is actually non-action. The only action is deciding where it is, right? So that is the only possibility where there could be any conscious intent there. Next. So just to test this, okay, a small patch of land, not small patch, our what Sir said about our ecoregion, okay, it is called Malabar Coast Moist Deciduous Forest Ecoregion, and in the south of it is where we fall, okay. Next, please. And KFRI has actually identified certain carvers for preparing conservation measures. Next. And the exercise that was done was to look at where they are located. Now, this is the biggest carver that we have. Okay, it is called Iringol. Sir also mentioned Iringol carver. And you can see the temple in the center and the sacred forest that goes all around it. So you just have a small clearing within a forest, and the rest is the grove. Next. Next. These are all images of the carver. Next. That's the temple complex and its approach path. Next. Most of these groves again have a water body associated with it. Some need not have it also, but it is not a necessity that there is always a water source, a visible water source inside a grove. Next. Yeah. Next. Okay. So, so this is like, for example, Madai carver. And just look at these. These are contour lines that are extracted. These are it's all the same, so it really doesn't matter. So these are, you look at the contour lines, and when they have this concave pattern, it means that water is, accumulating and beginning to have stream flow. I hope that's clear. No, I think that's the first technical thing that I have said in this entire thing. So it is like, so if the land is, this means that the contour lines are concave from my side, okay. Do this. This means that the contour lines are convex from my side, okay. So when the contour lines are convex like this, water is not going to come together, water is not going to accumulate from this. So this is your typical ridge. Okay. When its contour lines are concave, water is going to accumulate, stream flow is initiated. Sorry, I don't know. Next one. So that is what you can look out for in all. This is the next example where you have a similar contour signature. Next one. So this is where we are going to. This is Vallikattu. This is the grove, and you have this paddy field / drainage pattern. Again, you can see the same pattern happening here. Same pattern again, and just.
Another question, it looks like it's on the slope rather than the drainage basin.
No, it is hardly ever on the drainage basin. It is where water begins to accumulate and stream flow is initiated. So such regions are known as headwater regions. And newest research says that if headwater regions are conserved, then the entire watershed is, it remains healthy. Yes, sir. And in fact, Vallikatagavu is, I mean, it's in the midst of a controversy where mining is happening on the same hill, and Vallikatagavu is supposed to harbor monkeys, so that is a major worship there. Yes, yes, but with the mining happening, they get scared and they scatter.
Yeah, okay. And that is to be studied the laterite rock from other rock. That's the coastal plateau. You have certain there is sloping, but the top is tabletop like and sloping. So that on exposure, it has become hardened because the soil particles are washed and the clay accumulate below. Clay accumulates, so if you keep on cutting vertically, you get the building rock first. And then the building rock becomes softer, which is aluminum silicate and whitish. The aluminum silicate clay is more. So, which holds water. And then that is why the people in Kasargod and all know, drill holes, caves through that so that water comes in the traditional system. So this water digging to be linked to that the vegetation there. And if there is a this thing, quarry for cutting stone, only thing if the government can spend a few thousand rupees for forest department, the runoff water which vanishes in no time can be at a low cost brought into the quarry by directing so that the quarry becomes a reservoir and human habitation is all down. Their wells will be all recharged. So this is one which I observed because these are when Madagascar, India split, we got vertical side, Kerala, and from there through millions of years soil has been falling and we got the coast. So by rains, the vegetation is there, it remains. Vegetation is removed, that fine soil particles get washed and get down and all that, no, becomes this thing or it is washed into the water bodies like that. So that has to something to do, but in the this thing, soil studies, this explanation is already found that this coastal plateaus like Edimala and all, that no, their height is not more than 100 meters, I think, within. So up to that there was a sea level once height, and because of that the soil got flattened, and then water slowly retreated. So there is a slope and gradual slopes, and then waterways and all that. This concept has to be brought into water divining or water harvesting systems. It is unlike the Western Ghat, where you have bedrock, granite, gneissic rocks and all that. But this is a water conserving rock. Around that we get all human settlement, Arkanat gardens, all below, because they have the blessing of that hill. If there is a grove or forest, they will be ideally placed down. So this is where the government is planting acacias there, telling nothing comes up there. So if at least first sort use the quarries which are abundant, all these building rocks come from such quarries are there. Direct water into that at a low cost, no need for any dam. The clay absorbs down and then all down valley gets recharged. You can implement it because you are in a position. I can talk about it. Structure, laterite is not uniform. It has no relation to granite or gneiss. You have quartz, you have iron, you have clay. All this is a deposit of soil from the Western Ghat, and the rocks also mingle. So that by erosion becomes this building rock. But still, when you get cut fresh laterite stone, the cavities are filled with clay. But if the wall is not surface or plastered or like that, old compound walls, that soil gets washed out, you get full honeycombed hard iron structure.
At the railway station, when we were sitting, I remember.
Accident also happens, not understand. Highway cutting is wrongly done without this. Suddenly, if there is a water percolation there up in the quarry, water saturates, and down where vertical cut is there, the hill gets a heart attack. And then this slumps down into the valley. Low level landslide. This has done happened in Karwar and Kumta. Anyway, these are just an addition.
So we looked at groves, how they are across the world, looked at India, Kerala, and we look at a small basin here, which is just 72 kilometers square. That's where we are going. We are going to this basin. Okay. Now, the first and foremost thing is that literature talked about just 44 groves in this region, but on field it was more than 400. So easily it is a 10 times gap that is there. That is work to be done. This image you're all familiar with. So this image. This is actually Makari Pottan Devathin Kavar, the dumb gods abode. Mute, because it has other connotations. So this grove does not permit the entry of women, so which is why the photograph is taken from below the hill. This is your typical, ritual that happens. Some groves have it once a year, some groves have it once in 7 years, once in 12 years. It's really dependent on the cultural systems that are prevalent in the region. This is like 1 minute away from where I live. This is the grove we are going to. This is Vallikattukavu. It's going to be very different when you go here, because this is 10 years old photograph. Now we have more facilities within quotes, lots of cement, lots of concrete, all of that has come here. It's heartbreaking. This is the grove. So you see this big tree, and this is where you have the deity kept. And there is a perennial water source that originates there, and the deity is Jaladurga, or water goddess. This is the perennial source, and what you say there is the thing to put money in. Water flows out, there is a pond, and then you have the fields, then you have the arecanut palms, and then the field. So that is again the section that we normally see. We have paddy fields, then we have arecanut palms, then the grove, and then the hill. So it's hardly ever on top of the hill, like Sir said. Now only it's like a bulb coming on. This is another example, Thurail Kavu. This again is like about 10 kilometers from here. Like every 2 kilometers, if you keep your eyes open, you will find a Kavu for sure. The only thing is nobody knows where they are located, nobody knows how big it is, nobody knows who's taking care of it. So it's all there. It is your bottom-up conservation opportunity that is there, but we haven't utilized it. This is Thurail Kavu. So the Bhagavati is, this is on the left is the kota, where on 4 sides there is an enclosure, but the deity sits, exposed to the elements. This is the location that talks about the topographical characteristics. This is another one, Poilkavu. This is one of the biggest ones here. After Vallikattukavu, this is the second biggest kavu. The forest is not thick anymore. Even 10 years back, it was not thick. It is thinning. There are also several pathways cut across the grove. So in essence, it is getting fragmented. There is core area loss, and which sort of hastens the degradation in the vegetation composition as well. This is the sanctum of Poilkavu. That's the terrain character. It is very close to the beach. The soil is actually, white sand is what you have. And the deity goes to the sea to take bath and come back. There is also a ritual where, the deity goes hunting. But then there are no forests anymore. So they bring a dog and, it's tied up there. And then Vedikettu happens. Fireworks happen. The dog gets scared and runs away. So that is the ceremony now. Again, Poil actually means a low-lying, waterlogged area. But then there is no such area now. So when you ask people there, they say that, oh, there was a stream, but that is where the Britishers built the railway line. So Poil is there only in name. The stream is lost to the railway line. Parol, this is a typical grove. These were all big groves. This is a typical grove which is much smaller but better preserved. So you have a rocky outcrop, and originally the vegetation encircled this rocky outcrop, and the temple or the shrine was atop this hill. Now the grove is limited to just one side of the hill. This was the pond that was associated with the grove, and a very interesting part about this grove is that it has a caney in it. This is the only caney that I have seen in a grove. Caneys are nothing but really small wells. It is found mostly in Wayanad region, and the water is considered sacred. And there is a very distinct way of making these caneys. They use the bottom part of the palm, the anapana, I don't know what it is called. So the inside part of it is, it is allowed to rot, so it becomes a hollow tube, and that is inserted into the soil. But you need to know where to insert it. Like Rajendra sir can find out which is the word that is the code. You have to know where to insert this hollow tube so that you can find water. This is the terrain characteristic of Parol Paradevada. No, sir, they insert it in the ground. Yes, and it's very small. It can be like 1.5 feet, that's it. You don't know, it's not even deep. It is just as deep as the bottom of the trunk, that's it. Water sprouts from there. And there is no depth, there is no diameter, and you cannot walk with footwear there. You need to take off your chappal and then go there. So, but it is more prevalent in Wayanad region. That is again something that is not studied, not mapped. But if I could find in such a small area, definitely there are more caneys elsewhere as well. So it is a huge potential because these are occurring in human habitat areas which are fast converting into urban areas. This is a unique opportunity where if you conserve these sacred groves, you will actually have patches of biodiverse, rich areas or patches of integrated water, biodiversity and cultural conservation inside our cities, because groves in the cities have gone, but in the peri-urban areas these still remain, and if the move is taken to conserve them, then it's a huge opportunity that is left unexplored. There also appears to be a discernible pattern in the way these groves are located. They are located in areas that have low slopes, concave profile curvature, concave plan curvature, and low altitude again, possibly because that is where people have fields and houses. And the only aspect that does not show any visible pattern is which side the grove is facing. The aspect is on all 8 directions. Another interesting thing is that they are all located near the stream network. So, these are the dots, these are the groves that were mapped. And once it is overlain on the stream network, we see that they are actually occurring near, the stream network. And there are some that happen on top of a hill, like what we saw in the case of Thurail Kavu. But if you were to compare the distances of the streams, of the sacred groves from the streams, and compare it with the distance to the stream network for a set of randomly assigned points. In the case of randomly assigned points, it takes the shape of the bell curve, which is what you would see in any normal scenario. But in the case of sacred groves, the distance is less, and there are very few that are located far away from the stream network. And nothing makes better sense than conserving these sacred groves in our unique region, where it's the velocity of the flow of water that we need to curb. So these are located in areas where water collects, and that is where these groves are occurring. But like we have discussed, this is what happens in all groves: clearing and then building of temples. You will always have requests for funds for some building activity or the other in any grove that you visit. I'll conclude with this. Like Sir said, this is unrecorded knowledge. So there is this a certain song that is sung when a human being becomes God as part of the ritual practices. So when he is being made up, after say 41 days of penance, and then his face is painted, he is adorned in a certain special way. And throughout this phase, then he listens to these songs, Thotam Paatugal, which talk about the myths and legends of the grove. And at the end of it, that is when he is shown a mirror. And when he is shown the mirror, that is the moment of transformation, is what we like to believe. So an excerpt goes like this: Jalavum, Mannum, Akashavum, ennu venda Panjabhoodangaleyum കാത്തു രക്ഷിച്ചു പോരേണ്ട കാര്യത്തിനും നീക്കം കൂടാതെ കണ്ടു പരിരക്ഷിച്ചോളാം ഭൂസുരന്മാരെ. Roughly translated as water, earth and the sky, furthermore all the 5 elements I will sustain without fail. I will protect, O sons of the earth. So with that, I'm stopping.